Jamie Mackenzie, welcome to the Grind Diaries podcast.
What's important to me is doing something I love and allow me to find the right balance to be there for my family. Family's my sanctuary. And I was at a stage in my career anyway where I was asking myself, you know, do I want to keep doing this or do I want to try something new? Jamie, look, what makes you happy? And this is what I want, you know, and so, right, I need to make it happen. You have to start somewhere. If you don't start, you'll never get there. You know, so you have to start, and then you work hard, you apply yourself, you focus, you share kindness, you get kindness back, and just keep going. You know, and believe in what you're doing. Never give up. Dream big, and just go, and you'll get there. You'll get there. And I was like, right, honey. I said, this is what I want to do. I said, and I kind of explained my journey, and I said, I want to write this book. I passionately believe in storytelling. I want to do this. This is my dream. And I said, I think I've got a model. I've got something that I personally believe can be used for any scenario. And I drew it on a piece of kitchen towel. And I drew on here the sprout model. And I drew it out and I said, I think this can change people's lives. So I used the sprout model and I spoke about my family through the sprout model to my wife at that time. About 3-4 minutes. And at the end, she was in tears. She grabbed that bit of paper, that bit of kitchen towel. She said, you have to do this. You have to do this. And she said, I will support and back you all the way. Okay. Thank you, Ant. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm very, very excited about this. So, yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, not at all. I really appreciate you coming along. You know, as ever, it's, couple of hours out your day. I really appreciate you coming and having a conversation. So,
Pleasure.
So yeah, best-selling author.
Yeah, I think so.
You've got multiple leadership roles over the past, which we'll really get into later on in the podcast.
Yeah.
But you know, I've started reading your book. It's fascinating. So again, we'll get a little bit more into that. But
Thank you.
Do you want to just give yourself a little introduction and let everybody know kind of what it is you do and what it is you're aspiring for?
Yeah, absolutely. God, what am I aspiring for? That's a question. So, I mean, we'll get into the details of it, you know, through the chat. I've had a career in the corporate world really for the last 20 years. I spent a fair bit of time at Toshiba, Samsung, and Sodexo, which is sort of now rebranded to Pluxee. But we can unpack all of all of that, all my kind of the good days, the bad days, and everything in between. For reasons I'm sure we'll unpack, I decided to shift a career path and decided to kind of write a book, 28 Bags of Sprouts, Storytelling with Impact. And it's been something which has grown massively in the first sort of 4 to 6 weeks of it being live, top 5 bestseller in its category, which given the company it keeps is amazing. And really kind of from there, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about the book, but from there I'm trying to build something for me being self-employed really today, which when I switched myself to self-employed on LinkedIn, it kind of felt like a Facebook status change. So, you know, when like you're single and then you go in a relationship or then you're like married or even like the reverse of that. It felt like that because having been in the corporate world for like 20 years and being on payroll for companies, to go to self-employed is so scary, really scary. So so that's what I'm doing now, and what I'm trying to do with the book and with the model I've introduced in the book is to kind of work with businesses and leaders and teams to unlock the power of storytelling. So that's kind of unpacking where I'm at now, and I've got a couple of other projects which I'm sure we'll talk about with other books and what I want to do. But what am I aspiring for? I'm aspiring for a dream that I think I never realized I had, and something that I've always wanted to achieve, which is to have a kind of a book series on a topic that I'm passionate about, and to be able to, I hope, sort of educate and inspire people on something that could make a big impact in their lives. And that's kind of what I'm working towards at the moment. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into this a little bit later on, but brave decision, right? I mean, you know,
it's brave, stupid. I don't know which one yet.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I think, you know, we talk about this a lot, but making that jump, taking that step, and again, we'll talk about the kind of anxieties and the theory and all of that stuff in a little while. But absolute hats off to you for taking that jump. I mean, it's like you say, it's petrifying.
Yes,
but you seem to be kind of making your way, which is amazing.
And even being here today is because of the decision I've taken, and this is great. I would never have 6 months ago. I wouldn't even be dreaming of having a chat with someone like you on the Grind Diaries, a growing podcast, and I would never have been able to have done it if I'd made that call. But yeah, as you said, equally, I am full of anxiety and everything else that comes with it. But yeah, I'm sure we'll unpack that.
Yeah, but it's exciting as well, right?
Yeah,
so,
incredibly exciting.
It's important to, I guess it's important to have those anxieties because I guess it keeps you on track, but it's the excitement that keeps you going forward. Absolutely,
100%.
Amazing. What is success to you?
Oh, what's success to me? So I think if you'd asked me this question when I was in my 20s, I would have given you a different answer. If you'd asked me this question in my 30s, I'd have given it. So if you asked me this question in my 20s, I think I would have said money. That's what success is to me in my 20s. Money, right? Money, great car. I mean, the cars were different sort of 20 years ago. But, great car, money, flash stuff. That's kind of what I wanted in my 20s, if I'm honest. And that was what success would have been. In my 30s, it would have been promotion. It would have been more responsibility. It would have been more influence in business. It would be, getting my ideas across and delivering them for a business, shaping a business. That would have been my definition of success. In my 40s today, it's happiness. And that's a really broad word because it can mean everything to everyone, right? But for me, happiness is about, for me right now, is about finding the right equilibrium between getting fulfillment out of what I want to do professionally, but equally being able to spend time and enjoy time with my family. And it's finding the equilibrium between the two. Now, that doesn't mean that professionally I need to earn millions of pounds. I'm not interested in that. It would be nice, of course, but that's not important to me. What's important to me is doing something I love that can sustainably support my life and allow me to find the right balance to be there for my family and enjoy time with my family, which is my sanctuary. My family's my sanctuary. So what's success to me in that context in my 40s is getting that right balance. And every day it's a driver for me. Have I achieved that success? Not yet. I'm absolutely trying to curate a path to that. But that for me is success. And having a family, having gone through 20 years in the corporate space that I've done so far, you learn so much of and just getting older, I think you just learn so much more about yourself. Now, in my 50s, success could be being, as healthy and as medically correct as I can possibly be. That could well be a success point there. But right here, right now, it's that equilibrium to achieve happiness for myself. That's what's important to me. That's what I class as success.
So finding that balance that you're looking for, has that come from a previous imbalance?
Yes. So I think yes. And it was one of the drivers to me, stepping away from the role I was in before and the environment and the kind of the corporate world. And it's not saying I wouldn't go back to that because I might need to. I'm absolutely not closing the door on that. But just because of where I was and what I was doing, I was finding myself. It's like everyone. You work early, you work late, you travel, you're away from your family. And my job in particular was kind of local. I mean, I'm based down in the southeast tip of the country in Ramsgate, like an old fishing village, now kind of a seaside town. And I was traveling to Milton Keynes for my job. And that's a 3-hour drive, right? And I was driving 6-hour round trips to attend like a 1-hour meeting
Wow.
2-hour meeting, because it had to be face to face, and my role was on the board and as a CMO, and so I have to, you know, it's important to be there. But so that was really impacting my family time. That was really impacting my personal well-being, my health. It's a lot, you know, it's a lot. So without question, that kind of inspired a thought in my mind to say, right, what do I do differently? You know, what do I want to do? And I was at a stage in my career anyway where I was asking myself, you know, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to try something new? So that situation, which kind of manifested itself probably over like a 2-3 year period, and lockdown as well, and the pandemic kind of also helped to inspire different thoughts. Yeah, it just said, Jamie, look, what makes you happy? And I found a different type of happiness in my family, which we can unpack. And yeah, it kind of led me to a moment of, yeah, this is what I want, you know. And so, right, I need to make it happen. That's it, you know.
So was that the first thought? So was it like, I need to strive to this lifestyle. What can I do in order to get that to make that happen? Or was it more of, hey, I've got this great idea for a book.
Yeah.
And don't forget, I wanted that lifestyle as well. So that this feels like the right time.
It was yes. It was kind of like the two scenarios you put there, and which was like, you know, what drove which. I think it was like, it was a really odd, like, natural coming together of a number of different things that I wanted to change. I wanted to change professionally and in my career. I wanted to do something different. I felt a real desire, a relit desire on the importance of family and being there for my wife, being there for. I've got 2 sons. The one that doesn't live with me, but my other boy, Cameron, who's 5, being there for him. And I had a hunger and desire to be there for them. But then the book idea came from, if someone said to me, Jamie, what is your happiest moment, right? In terms of, like, not happiness in terms of success, but like, where are you most happiest? On a stage in front of 1,000 people, delivering an inspirational message that can help people to change lives. That is my absolute place. I would do that every day of the week. If I had people that would come, if I had a value to bring, if I had a message that landed, that's exactly what I would do. And people that have worked with me through the years know that I love this. Any opportunity to be on a stage to present to people, I will jump at it. You know, you don't have to hold me back. It's never been like that for me, but that's what I love. And I had this hunger for it, and I thought, how could I create this in my career? How could I make a career out of it? And I kind of worked back from it. And I said, you need a message to land. You need an important topic. It needs to be broad, and it needs to be something that you can bring value to. And that's where I kind of got back to storytelling. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, how else could I then make this happen and materialize it? And typically people build a successful career through that lens, and then they write a book, typically. Yeah. But I've done it the reverse. So who knows where that will go? You know, we'll find out in a few years' time if it was right or wrong. But that was the path that I took, and it was a real drive for me, because I want to do that. And that's kind of how the book started to manifest. But actually, the book and the title and the story behind the book is another story in itself. But that drive to share a message that can land with people and can help people to positively impact and change their lives. I mean, I say stories change lives, is what's really important to me. For me, that's a passion, and if I can generate a sustainable income from it to support a humble lifestyle, fantastic. And if that allows me to give value and gift value, if that allows me to create value, amazing.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of drivers in there for me that you kind of learn about what's important through life.
Yeah. And I can definitely relate, I can definitely relate. You do get to that kind of maturity, don't you, where you stop thinking about the material objects that you can acquire.
Yeah.
And start to think about the life that you actually want.
Exactly.
And I think that's it's funny how we tend to have this a similar conversation in different in different formats. But it seems to be a theme of, your idea of success changes over time. That's,
Absolutely.
that seems to be fact. Everybody that I've spoken to said the same thing.
Mm.
But it is, a bit of a trend that you start off wanting the high life.
Yeah.
And you end up actually thinking, I just want to spend my days on a beach with a cocktail and know that I can afford to pay for the family to eat.
Yeah, exactly. And and there's this perception of success out there, which is, I don't want to swear, but which is rubbish. But as in, it's fake. So I'll give you an example. So I tried a little, I didn't do it, but a little experiment. So ever since switching to like being self-employed, and I've got, social profiles on all of the social channels, and I'm trying to build them. But ever since I've switched to self-employed, I get different types of targeted advertising now, as you can imagine, right? And I was on Facebook, and I keep getting hit on Facebook with these adverts of mid-20 white males who are in flashy villas, stepping out of a great car, talking about how their new way of working or what have you has allowed them to have this success. Click on the link below. It's £100. You're going to go on this life-changing course for an hour. Subscribe here, right? And so, okay, cool. So then I thought to myself, oh, could I do that? I'm not going to do that, and I will not do that. But I could. So I did a bit of research, a bit of time on my hands, kind of, and I was just like, so I could hire an Airbnb overnight, really nice one, in like a great setting, £400. I can rent an Aston Martin for the day, for 24 hours overnight, for £300, £700. And I could invest £200 in pay-click advertising on Facebook. All I need is an iPhone. And I could film me getting out of a car, walking around this great house, and giving off this impression that this is mine, and I've achieved this through the Sprout model, okay, in my book. And because of the Sprout model, I now own this beautiful £1 million property, this £100,000 car. I'm smiling all over the shop. Great. I could do that if I wanted to. It's absolute rubbish. Doesn't exist. Now, I'm not saying that people haven't achieved that, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. And actually, on the surface, a lot of people, when you see these big things, the reality is they don't own them. They're leveraging serious debt to have them, right? So, and that's me not knocking anyone that's had any amazing success at all. But my point is with this is that what you see isn't always real. And I think this creates this perception that is not reality. And I think that can lead people down, difficult paths, to try and achieve it. And actually they find themselves heavily in debt. And, so I think it's a watch out. And I think it's for my boys as well. A big part of it is you work for what you get. You work hard for what you get. And kindness will be paid back to you if you are kind yourself. And, just be step by step in a rational, logical way, maybe.
Yeah. It's frightening for me because we live in such a world of instant gratification.
Yeah.
Everybody wants that dopamine hit immediately, and I think what the message that's being lost is that there's no substitute for hard work.
Yeah.
There is no substitute for putting yourself out there, being brave and working your bollocks off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And going out and getting something,
Absolutely.
And these, it frightens me a little bit because, I've got kids that are sort of teens.
Yep.
And they're looking at this
tricky
stuff.
age,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But they're looking at this stuff and, to them, wow, this is easy. All I've got to do is sign up to this person's, course and I'm away and, I'll be a multimillionaire before you know it. And I think that was why, these conversations are important to me because, I really want to kind of get to the bottom of, I really want to expose the struggle and the hard, the hard graft that goes into writing a book, for example, and kind of what comes of it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's it's frightening, but fingers crossed this message gets through as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, and it's just about the reality of, and even now, I've gone from being hopefully a half decent, experienced leader, and having been in the commercial marketing world for 20 years, comfortable and confident in what I do, to now I feel like I'm a student again. Like, you know, where I started off in my journey 20 years ago, I kind of feel like I'm in that mode again. But what I keep telling myself is you have to start somewhere. If you don't start, you'll never get there. You know, so you have to start, and then you work hard, you apply yourself, you focus, you share kindness, you'll get kindness back, and just keep going. You know, and believe in what you're doing. Never give up. Dream big, and just go. And you'll get there. You'll get there. You know, the path won't be straight and it won't be quick. And I try and keep telling myself that every day. Oh, and you know, Jamie, you should build up your following. Oh, that guy's got like 100,000 followers. He did that over like 10 years. Do you know what, you know, and is it actually that important? So it's just these things that play on your mind, but you know, you work hard.
It's a great message. Yeah. It's an important message as well, I think.
I think so.
So take us back. Let's get into kind of what led you to becoming a best-selling author and a person that's kind of aspiring for this, you know, this kind of balance in life.
Well, I suppose take it right back to so yeah, I was kind of, I've always lived. I was my mum gave birth to me in Margate Hospital. Not far from the Albion, actually, where you were too far at Margate Hospital there. Yeah. And I was kind of we lived in Ramsgate though, so and I lived in Ramsgate, which is southeast tip of the country. It's kind of a real seaside town. I lived there for 18 years, and yeah, I was brought up in a really I know it's gonna get to me, but it's fine. Yeah, a really amazing family. Like it was my mum, it was my dad, it was me and my brother. So my brother's 3 years younger than me, and I always joke about saying my first 3 years of my life were the best, but they weren't. They weren't. Like my brother's my best friend, and we were so fortunate. I was so fortunate to, you know, my parents didn't have a lot. I'm not saying we were on the breadline. You know, we had a roof over our heads. The house was heated. We had food on the table. But they didn't have a lot of money. But what we did have an abundance of was love and support and safety. And the closeness of the four of us as a family has played a massive part in my life, actually. And I'm forever great. Don't worry, I'll probably won't be nice for the whole podcast. I won't ask for the tissues yet, but you know, it's just so raw and important to me, my family and the sanctuary. And I'll come on to it. I think unfortunately my dad's not with us. He passed away during lockdown in 2020. But you know, I have such fond memories of what the four of us had together back in the day. And as I said, you know, it's funny about those kind of material items, those commoditized items that kids get exposed to today. Like I come from an environment where there's no waste. There's no waste. You know, you don't waste food, which doesn't probably help my waistline. But, you know, I hate it because that's, for me, throwing money down the drain. It's throwing money in the bin, you know, and that was really important to my parents. And when you get something, you work for it and you get it, but you feel the achievement of having worked for it and getting it, and you see the value of that. So I had that when I was younger, and my family were absolutely amazing. You know, my mum worked incredibly hard. She kind of had her own play group, and so she was kind of always around kids, but she was always there to drop us off at school. She was always there to pick us up. And mum played a massive part in that. School holidays as well, you know, she was always with us. My dad worked, he was kind of, it's funny actually, when you're younger, you don't really know what your dad does. It's like, well, certainly for my dad being around, but he was kind of like I think it was kind of like a sales manager at an engineering firm. But he worked incredibly hard. You know, he would leave early, he would be back late, he'd maybe see us for bedtime. But they created for me, this environment, of like hard work, love, safety, support. My parents they never argued. They didn't. I mean, not that we saw, but they didn't. You know, they were kind of like best friends, soulmates. They adored each other. You know, been together since they were late teens. It would. I think this year would have been their 50th wedding anniversary if my dad was still around. so even for me today, seeing conflict or an argument is like, oh my goodness, like what's that all about? That's a disaster. It's you know, it's like crisis, you know. So I was around that, you know, and that was awesome. And so I think, you know, that shaped a lot of who I am today, as you would, you know, that kind of 0 to 7 years is really impressionable ages. It really shapes, I think it shapes who you are as a person. So I feel exceptionally blessed to have had that, you know, environment to be brought up in. And to, you know, today I see my brother like every other day, you know, and my mum, I see her, you know, she only lives 20 minutes down the road. So we see her as much as possible. And, you know, we're really close. And for me, I value that significantly. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I guess you don't really recognize the value that you've just explained whilst you're there. So, you know, you kind of get to a point where you do look back and you do start to look at, and I guess these conversations help that, but you get to a point where you look back and you know, it all begins to make sense.
Yeah.
Why am I like this? Well, that's because
yeah,
my parents were like this.
Yeah.
And again, it's been really interesting having these conversations, and kind of it plays a, you know, it seems to play a big part. And like you said, that 0 to 7, where you've got no concept of what you're going to be doing 30 years later, but yet it's so impactful.
Absolutely. And I think as you get older, you start to, I don't know whether it's like a biological switch, but you start to reflect more, you know, and you start to think more, and you start to kind of maybe connect more with the dots. And I think, you know, a lot of roads lead back to, you know, those first few years of kind of how you're shaped as an individual. And you're right, you know, I probably in the moment, if you asked an 8-year-old Jamie what he thought about, you know, his parents, I would not in any way be able to narrate what I've just narrated, you know, back then, you know, they'd be like, oh, they don't get me enough sweeties, you know, that would probably be the stock answer, right? But now, obviously, I look back, and not just through the context and perspective of, you know, appreciating what they did and how they brought us up, but as a parent now as well to 2 boys, you know, one boy who's with me, one boy who lives with his mum. I also recognize, you know, I always find that, and someone said this to me actually, that so when my first son was born, they said, Jamie, they said, you don't realize how much your parents love you until you become a parent. Once you become a parent, you suddenly see the love that exists between a parent and a child, and then the perspective on how your parents love you changes. And that was a switch, without any question, that was a switch for me, because I suddenly recognized and acknowledged the love that they had for me as a child, and that changes your relationship. I think it absolutely does.
I've had this conversation before, but for me, becoming a parent changed everything.
Yeah,
I was a completely different person before I was a father.
Yeah,
it's quite frightening. It's frightening to think who I would be if I wasn't a father.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and actually, kids, you know, having children can save you, can elevate you, can do many different things. But through my context, through my perspective, being a parent, it's hard to say would brought me closer to my parents, because I was always close to my parents, but it kind of shifted something, a level of respect for them and love. That's important, man. That's important. It's not saying that everyone should go out and have babies, by the way. Like, it's everyone, you know, each to their own. But through my lens, it was it's massive.
It's an important step. Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, growing up then, you know, amazing family, lots of love in a amazing environment, I guess, right by the seaside. I mean,
yes.
You know, let's not sort of wash that over. I mean, that's got to be. It's got to play a big part as well.
Do you know what? You know, absolutely. And it's funny because, again, back to your point about not appreciating it in the moment, for the 18 years that I lived down by the seaside, by the beach, kind of towards the end, I just wanted to move away. Not because I wanted to move away from my family or anything, but I wanted a change. And but when you get older, and now I've moved back to the same area. I mean, I live now 5 minutes drive from where I used to live. You appreciate it, and being brought up by the sea is amazing. So sun's out typically between the months of, like, it's not great at the moment, but April and end of September. Yeah. So school holidays for me and my brother, beach every day, because mum and dad didn't have a lot of money, so it's free. You take a little packed lunch with you, you go down to the beach, spend the day on the beach in Ramsgate. Amazing. So you're with the sea air, you're kind of free to play, you've got the sand in your feet. What I think people today typically see as like a destination for escape, like beach holidays and all these pictures. I lived there, so I think that was a great environment. It's a lovely environment, actually, and I've always in the book I talk about the senses. I think the senses are a really important part of storytelling, and using the sense of smell. Whenever I get a waft of seaweed, which sounds really weird, but when the tide's out, it's a hot day, there's seaweed lying across the sands, and it's warming up. It kind of releases this smell. And on, like, literally half a mile back from the beach where we live, you can smell it in the air. If the wind's in a good direction, you can smell it in the air. That smell for me is like comfort. Everyone's got those smells, right? Like with foods or whatever. There's always a smell that sends you somewhere, and for me, that smell of seaweed sends me somewhere. And that was all from my childhood. So now being able to smell it as an adult. Albeit Cameron's like, "Daddy, what's that horrible smell?" For me, it's lovely. So and I think you speak to anyone in life, those who've been brought up by the seaside, and they move away. Typically, they get pulled back at some point in their life because you miss it. You miss it. And I moved away I was away for about 17 years, 16 years. I moved away, and I kind of relocated back. But yeah, seaside's great, man. It's great. Really
I find it's I just find it's good for the mind. I mean, we live in Southampton, so we're not a million miles away from a beach in either direction. No,
absolutely.
And I mean, as a family, we spend as much time as possible.
Yeah,
even winter time. We quite often just go for a walk along the beach, just because it certainly for me, it almost feels cleansing. It almost feels like you're resetting.
Absolutely.
There's something quite therapeutic about it.
I think there is. And like sitting on the beach, warm sun, listening to the sea. It's not quite as calm as that with a 5-year-old, as you could imagine. You're building sandcastles and you're playing, or you're finding little creatures in the rock pools. But yeah, it's great. It's great. So yeah, I was lucky to so while we didn't have a lot, the environment where we lived is a great place. And it is now.
So how did that shape you then, once you've kind of got to an age where you've now got to think about a career? How did that kind of...
Well, it's kind of funny because like through school, I wouldn't class... It's funny, actually. So someone said to me, it's like, Jamie, you've written this... So the book's self-published, right? So I've written it, I've edited it, I've storyboarded it, I interviewed everybody. I mean, it's 100%, bar getting a professional to do a grammatical check, which is an important step. Albeit the mistakes weren't too bad, actually. It's 100% me. So they were like, you've done this, so you must be, academic. No, absolutely no way. And through schooling, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I was never like a top performer or anything like that at school. I don't know what... But I would, if someone says to me, Jamie, cards on the table, what were you? I'd say average, slightly below, borderline, in that middle, maybe top of the bottom half. If you were to have like a league table, right? That my grades always showed that. But during infant school, which down that way was kind of ages 5 to 7. my mum was telling me a story actually, because I obviously coming on the podcast and trying to like, you know, dig a few things that she's recognised. And she was saying, you know, one of your teachers, a lady called Mrs. Upton, she always said that you would become a leader. She says, I think, you know, Jamie's a born leader, which is really odd, because during school and even into the first part of uni, I was really socially shy. I really struggled with communication and being comfortable around people. I was very reserved. My natural place wouldn't be with a group of people. I was probably more, introverted. Introverted in my kind of, but she said, be like a, natural born leader, which is ironic because about 90% of my career, I've led people, whether it's one person or up to 50 people, in terms of my team sizes. And I love it. I love leading alongside, but I love leading from the front. I love that. And so she said that, but as I kind of transitioned through school into kind of junior school and even into senior school, I didn't really, I was kind of average borderline kind of, and if throughout that period, be like, Jamie, what do you want to do? My stock answer would always be, well, I don't know. Or what do you enjoy? Well, I don't really know, because I didn't really know. And so it was hard for me to kind of articulate really kind of the direction I wanted to go in. So I kind of just went with it. I just kind of went with school. But yeah, I didn't really enjoy school that much. A couple of reasons. I mean, I got a lot of bullying during school. I think from the ages of like, I don't know, would have been probably 8 to 16. I think I was bullied every year. I mean, and that's not, and this isn't by the way like a poor me. I mean, it's just the reality of what it is. I mean, with social media now and everything that you see now, I mean, crikey, I'm worried for my kids. But anyway, for me, I was overweight and I had glasses. So pretty much I was a walking target for bullies at the time. And I think that impacted me in terms of confidence and in terms of what I felt I wanted to do, for sure. And that was difficult. But I remember a story. So one of my bullies. So I had it was at junior school, and I would have been about, I don't know, 9 or something. And I had a really great. I played I kind of did like a bit of football, but I was my fitness wasn't great, slightly overweight and what have you. But anyway, I remember playing this game of football and I scored a goal, and I was like so proud. Like I'd never score a goal, and I was buzzing. And there was this guy, I won't say who he is, but there was this guy that was kind of bullying me through school. He used to do stuff like, hide my glasses and like poke at my waistline and stuff like this, like kids, right? They do that stuff. And anyway, I'd scored this goal, I was really happy. And he was like giving me so much jip about this goal, saying how rubbish it was. And in the changing rooms after, he was just mouthing off about it. I got really upset. And I came out of school and my mum was, I'll vividly remember this. I came out, my mum was there and I was really, really upset. And she was like, what's wrong? And I said what happened and then what this guy had done. But then I kind of told her everything in like literally 2 minutes of this like build up of, bullying. And then this guy came out. That was it. My mum went for him. I mean, she didn't like physically hit him or anything, but I saw my mum go at him, and you saw a parent verbally, respectfully explaining to this boy, don't you ever, treat my son like that again, ever. And then that evening she rung, back in the day where the phones, I think maybe they turned as well, or at that point, or like a lot of listeners promote with wrist lights, but she rung his mum and explained the situation, and sure enough, from that he didn't come near me again. But so there's lots of messages I think in there, but even like through senior school, I tell that story because I think for me, in terms of impacting who I became and the direction I went on in my career, that I've always had this I can't stand bullies, and through my 20 years of leadership, and maybe we're segueing off, Ant, so please pull me back in, you know. But for my 20 years in the workplace, I see bullies. And because of my upbringing and the direction of that, I have no time for bullies at all. And as I grew up in my leadership positions in work, I was getting into more influential roles where I could influence and spot behaviours. It's not about behave, because I think sometimes people behave in a certain way because there's stuff happening at home, or they have different pressured situations that elicits different behaviours. You have to respect that and let that play out, I believe. But when you can spot consistent bullying behaviour in the workplace, for me, that needs to be removed, because it is just toxic. And so, yeah, it segue, but people like that, I don't have any time for. So that was a big part of it happened a lot through my schooling, and I think it suppressed my confidence a lot through that period.
So at the time, we see it as a real negative, and it's quite damaging. And
yeah,
do you think that there's been a positive output from that period? Like, what did you learn as a young lad that's getting bullied that has helped you along your way now?
So I think two things that came out of that. One is centered around being, and actually it does come, reflecting on it, it does come a bit into kind of my chosen topic of expertise now on storytelling communication, is that a big part of it I learned is that when I shared, I could resolve it. I could fix it. When I spoke up, when I shared my feeling, when I expressed it to someone, which in that moment was my mum, but actually during senior school it's slightly different. I had friends I could share it with, and then they helped. And the more you share, the more you communicate, you can and you release it from yourself, what's happening, you'll be surprised as to how quickly it can dissipate and disappear. And I think that was a key learning for me. But I think the other thing was, I don't want to say, because do you know what? Like life's not perfect, right? Life's not easy. It's hard. Good days, bad days, really terrible days, and I think it's normal. As you say, it's normal. This is what this is about. And I think going through that, you build a sense of resilience in yourself to, not to say that that's acceptable behaviour, but to say that I will be exposed to it in my life, and I know how to handle it. And I think it built a resilience, I think, of not letting stuff will hit you, but you prevent it from going into your core. So when you go into your core, it starts to damage you. So I think that's really helped, I think, for me. And I would never say, like, I want to go back and say, right, I want to remove all bullying from my life, because I don't want to remove anything from what's happening in my life, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here today, with you and where I'm at. But I think that you're right, that, probably those two things, the resilience, and actually that there's something in there about the communication and sharing what is in you and affecting you with others, because that will help you. It will help you for other people. Yeah.
So was there ever any kind of period in time where you felt angry about the kind of bullying and felt kind of resentful in that way? Because they say that the bullied become a bully.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly that's not the case with you, but
I hope not.
was there ever any kind of resentment, or do you think subconsciously at that time you just took the lessons from that, the resilience from it, and let that help you in the future?
I never allowed the anger and hurt it caused me to manifest itself into anger and hurt from me onto others. I never let that happen. And I would never, and that's just not me as a person. Like it's just not me. So I think I just took it. So no, don't get me wrong, I got frustrated with it, but actually hurt me as opposed to trigger me to react back and project my hurt or frustration onto others. I did it. No. So I think, but I can absolutely see how if you've been heavily bullied and then you become this. Why? Because maybe you feel that's the only way to survive. Maybe that's the only way you feel that you can express yourself through that. No, that was never me actually. But that's a really interesting point.
Yeah,
actually,
and I think the reason I ask it is because it's about controlling your emotion.
Yeah.
Right. And what we always seem to forget is that controlling your emotion is an absolute superpower.
Yes.
You know, when we're younger, we see angry men that we feel are powerful and we fear and we think they're intimidating and, you know, but as you get older, you know, being able to harness those emotions and being able to not get angry, still something I'm working on at the moment, especially with teenagers.
I bet, right? I bet, yeah.
But you know, being able to kind of harness that from that kind of age, you know, it's got to be a superpower.
I think maybe, or I don't know. I've never looked at it through that lens actually. I think, I don't know. I think what happened, just became more reserved. So actually, if I did have any of that in me, it was just suppressed right back, and I just became very reserved. So I think the kind of what then happened through senior and even to the start of uni, there's a story at uni that changed everything for me actually with that, is that I just became reserved. So actually my default position was to remove myself from situations and to just fade back. You know, that's kind of, even like physically I do that, and that's kind of maybe how I felt, how it kind of felt to me. I just kind of sat back and, okay, if I just step back into the shadows and let other stuff play out and just become, I've never explored this too much, but good questions. Fade into the darkness, really, and be no one, then I can't be a target. And I think that probably played out. And even, you know, people say to me, Jamie, have you got loads big groups of friends? You know, you're kind of very extroverted even now, what have you? No, I have my family. That's all that's important to me, you know? Maybe. Yeah, probably.
So do you think like being that kind of introverted youngster, that kind of shy guy, that's potentially played a part in that as well? And then do you think that makes you more conscious about communication?
Yes, that's do you know what, and that's a really interesting point. Yeah, because yes, actually, because someone said to me the other day, they were like, I was asking people about, you know, who are the great communicators, you know, because just part of the research for the book actually, and it took me back to school because, you know, again, you know, what are the teachers that you remember at school? And typically people are like, they always boil back to, you know, why do you enjoy such a teacher? It's because they're really engaging. Typically, the reason why they're engaged is because they're great communicators, which means they're great storytellers. And so that whole communication thing was really, really important. And to your point, I think when I was kind of more reserved and being further back, when I spoke, I thought about what I was going to say and how I was going to say it and the way I would project to myself, and more so the impact that I wanted to make. And I think you're right. And I talk about the extrovertedness because back to that conversation, was, you know, the perception sometimes is that the extroverts are the best speakers. Actually, the extroverts say a lot, but they don't actually say anything. When you really listen, they talk a lot, they share a lot, make a lot of noise, and they dominate the room. Amazing, great, brilliant. When you boil it right down, what was the impact they made? What cut through? What was the key thing that drove an impact on an action for someone to do next? You'll find it's not a lot. So great extroverts aren't great communicators. You know, there is a lot, by the way, a lot are, and there's some, but I think you're right. Maybe being more introverted, made me think more about how to communicate.
There's a saying, isn't there, about the quietest person in the room's the one that's controlling the conversation.
Yes.
And I think that's, you know, quite a powerful, you know, it kind of backs up what we're talking about.
Do you know, absolutely. And I think you know, for me, and there's a story that I'll share about university, and I write it in the book. Like, I hope one of the messages from even the work that I do to people is like, every person has brilliance within them. Don't let the fear of communication limit your potential, because I believe that every human being is amazing, even the bullies. You know, there's something good in everybody, but sometimes how you express yourself and how you communicate will limit your potential, because everything is driven, I believe, by the communication between people. And if you can really work on that, then you can unlock so much potential in yourself. And I wouldn't want, you know, people to feel that they're limited by that. Yeah, and you're right. I think, you know, being that through school and through junior school and even into the start of uni, you know, that had a profound impact on me, actually, and maybe it's led, you know, kind of allowed me to kind of be more conscious about how I communicate, I think.
It is a really interesting point, isn't it? Because there have been so many instances where I've unintentionally upset somebody, or unintentionally offended somebody.
Yeah.
And it's because I haven't communicated in the right way.
Yeah.
I haven't got the perception that I wanted to get across. I haven't managed to get that across.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, yeah, you know, I agree with what you're saying in like that kind of, you know, how important communication is.
And, you know, and you're right. People don't, no one, I don't think anyone I think there are some people that do truly mean to offend in their action, but for a lot, misinterpretation is significant. And especially, I think, more as a community, you know, we've gone from local community to regional community to national community to continental community to now global community. You know, anyone in the world can listen to this podcast. Anyone. You know, you go back 20 years, that wouldn't be the case, right? You know, so you know, your reach as a human being today has never been so wide. But that means that you're exposing yourself to so many different types of people, and everyone, by the way, is an individual. 8 billion people. So how you communicate is really important, and I think it's never been so important. And so taking time to address and kind of level up that universal and transversal skill, it can change lives, as I said. But yeah, so I think, yeah, for me, it's been, yeah, that's kind of grown up through the schooling years, and then kind of at the end of my senior school, I was presented with actually 4 opportunities about where my career went. You know, I at the time I was working in a greengrocers, which is actually, you know, a big part of the 28 Bags of Sprouts book. Yeah. I was working in a greengrocers. I mean, it started as a paperboy, actually, which I think, you know, doing a paper round is absolute grounding. Like at that young age, I think it was like 11 or 12. I don't know if that was legal at the time. I don't know, but I was basic, you know, getting up at a certain time, delivering papers. You know, it's those grounding principles. But then, so I was in the greengrocers, and I could have leased the greengrocers off my boss at the time, who I worked for. I was offered an apprenticeship at a quantity surveying company. I was offered kind of like an apprenticeship at BT, because my cousin worked in BT in their kind of call centre in Canterbury. Or I could go to university. Those are like the 4 options to me. And it was the drive to want to move out of the area that kind of drove me to do university. I think I kind of maybe wanted to prolong going into work, maybe a little bit at the time, if I'm honest. As I said, I was never really an academic, so I wasn't really, but I kind of enjoyed business. And at the time, what was 20 plus years ago, you know, it was a topic, and I was the first person in the family to go to university, not my immediate, but my entire family, the first person to go. And that was like, oh, that's quite funky, you know, I'll do that. And I found my way to be at a university in Southampton, which I know you know Southampton very well, by the sea. You know, so there's a bit of a home comfort there, but 3 hours away from where I lived and moving away from my family. And then I had kind of four years at university in business studies. you know, which kind of, that was actually a significant time to set me off on the path that I was going to go on to. But it was a significant time in the sense that it was there where I overcame this suppression of myself and became more. And it was my first year of uni, and I talk about it in the book, and I call it a moment of kind of my inner rock, as I call it. And it was like our first term, we were having to do a presentation to like the class, like our seminar group, maybe like 20 people. And I was really scared. I mean, I knew the topic, you know, I felt comfortable with the topic, but I was so scared. And so we had our lesson, or like our seminar class, and we had like literally like a 20-minute, I think it was like a 20-minute presentation. And I was in the student union about 2 hours before, and I was scared. I was so scared. I was like sweaty palms. My guts were doing somersaults. And I sat there and I thought, I can't do this. I cannot stand up in front of a class that I knew, I'd known for a few weeks. I just can't do it. I can't do it. So I went into the toilet of the student union. I sat on the toilet for half an hour, and I was riddled with fear, paralyzed with fear. And I made a decision at that point that I was going to go home, like go back to my halls of residence. So I left. I walked back, 20-minute walk, like through like the park. Southampton is a name for a park. You wouldn't walk through it at night, but it might have changed now. Actually, I walked through it. And I got back to my halls of residence, and I got back to my room. And for the next 10 minutes, I cried. I cried out of fear. I cried out of disappointment in myself. I cried out of letting people down, myself more than anyone, but my class, you know, my seminar class as well. And I didn't do it. I didn't turn up. And a bit later on, my friend who was in my class, he kind of came. He was on his way back to his halls of residence, different halls of residence. And he knocked on the door. I could see it was him. I let him in, and he was like, "What? Where were you? Like, what happened? Like, why don't you present your project, right?" And I said, "Busby, I said, I couldn't do it, mate. I'm scared. I can't do it. I'm fearful. I cannot do that." And so, but what he said next changed everything for me. And I genuinely believe it's changed a path for me in what I am, in kind of how I am today. And he said, right, as opposed to like giving me banter and being like, "Oh, come on, stop being a whatever, just get out there," you know. He said, right. He said, "Okay, I know what you're scared of." He'd make a great coach, actually. And he said, "Jamie," he said, "you know, who do you look to? Who is the best public speaker that you know, that you can see, that you can at least reference, you know, or take some tips from, not become, but, you know, just kind of look." It's okay. And it was the late 90s, and it was in the WWF Attitude era. Mm-hmm. And I watched WWF, and there was a particular wrestler, not because of his wrestling, albeit he was pretty funky, but because of how he owned the microphone, commanded audiences, and projected himself. And that was The Rock.
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson,
yeah,
right? Who now is an extremely successful businessman and actor and everything else. And I said, "Busby," I said, "The Rock." I said, "The Rock." And he said, "Jay," he said, "no offense, mate." He said, "You're not going to have muscles like The Rock any day soon." I said, No. I said, "It's not about that. It's not about that." I said, "But it's about how he does it." He said, "I think he's amazing." He said, "Jamie," he said, "use The Rock. Use The Rock as your inspiration." And I call it in the book my inner rock, you know. And what I did from that point was the videos, because I didn't have like satellite TV and stuff. My parents were recording like Raw and SmackDown at the time and posted them to me at uni, and I was used to play them on like VHS, which again not many people remember. And I watched those videos, and I watched The Rock, but I rocked some matches. I enjoyed the entertainment, but I was watching him intently about how he did it, how he used his body language, how he projected his voice, how he used pauses at certain moment, how he emphasized certain words at the right time, how he moved with the energy of the audience. I watched that intently, and then I brought that into my style. just like that, changed me overnight. It absolutely changed me. And so now I call it my inner rock. I'm clearly not The Rock. I'm clearly not Dwayne Johnson in any shape or form, but he inspired me through that lens. And even now, you see stuff on social media. He's obviously very present in the media at the moment. And I kind of still look at how he does certain things. And yeah, I think it's great. And I bring a lot of that into what I do when I do public speaking. But Anne, that changed it for me. I suddenly had this inner rock confidence in me. And I started at uni and and that's when I said to you at the top of the podcast, where's my happiest moment on stage in front of, it scares me, but I adore it. And it's because of my inner rock.
So what was the first time you used that inner rock? So you're crumbling in your uni house of residence.
Yeah.
You find this power from this inspiration.
Yeah.
When was the first time you used it?
3 weeks after I was able to pre-present my project. The project that I didn't present, the tutor allowed me to do it 3 weeks later.
So how did that feel at that?
Oh, it's amazing.
So like before, were you still nervous? Did you still go through?
I was still leading up to it. I was still nervous, and I still felt anxiety. And even today, coming here, I was nervous, feel anxious. Anytime I do anything like that, I still feel nervous and anxious. But I see that as because I really care about what I say and how I say it and the outcome. So I still had the same feeling, but what I didn't do was sit in the toilet for half an hour and then walk home and then cry. I just calmed myself. I visualized The Rock. It's really weird. I visualized how The Rock would actually do it in the seminar group of 20 people presenting my project. And I just did it as me. And the first 2 minutes I was shaking. The next kind of 15 minutes, I felt great. And the best thing about it at the end, because don't get me wrong, people in there were really supportive because, I chatted to them in that 3 weeks afterwards about and stuff. So they're always going to support me because they're a great group of people. But they really recognised and acknowledged, they were like, that was really great, Jamie. That was really good. And that just gave me a whole level of confidence. And that was it. And yeah, since then now, any opportunity to, in inverted commas, public speaking, because I think public speaking can be so many different things. I mean, if you get public speaking, you could be chatting one-on-one with someone. It doesn't have to be recorded. You're still speaking publicly, right? Yeah, I relish it.
There's a kind of euphoria about stepping off the stage, isn't there? Once you've delivered something.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And when you see the reaction, you see it's landed, and that's why I'd always say if you're gonna be in a speaking environment, if as much as you can, have the audience as close to you as possible, have the seats nice and tight, have it nice and close to you as a presenter, because you can feel, see, immerse yourself in the energy of the audience as you're presenting. You can see the reactions, but the beauty of that is that you can also respond to it. You can respond to it as a storyteller. I call it in the book. I call it something called I call it the dance, and you can dance with your audience, metaphorically speaking, with the energy and when you come off, and you not just feel it, but then people come up to you after you and say, "Do you know what? That was brilliant. That really impacted me. Do you know what? Genuinely, albeit financial income helps to live, someone saying to me, you have impacted me, is worth more than anything." Really. And yeah, it's a great feeling. And that transformed actually my career path from them. I think I had the confidence in me to, express me without filter.
When you're public speaking and you're reading that room, have you ever had a time where it's a tough crowd? There's no response, and how do you kind of overcome that?
I do. Oh my goodness, I didn't even think about this story until you mentioned it now. So during uni, my third year placement year, I got a job at Toshiba in the photocopier department, not literally as in the administration department, as in the department selling photocopiers. And so I joined them, and I had an event, it's like a dealer event, and I was presenting my product. So I stood up on stage, all like in a rock, and standing up and doing it. And I don't even know why now, but I recall a group of people in there. It was the morning after the night before, and that industry at the time, work hard, play hard type industry, kind of trading in some respects, but with photocopiers. And not anyone listening from that industry. It's an amazing industry. It grounded me, but no, there's anything wrong with that. So a group of hungover people, dealership owners, and for some reason it was really heavy rain, and there was like water dripping down at the back of the room, and I made some really stupid joke about having an umbrella as like my early icebreaker. Oh my goodness, it tanked. Oh, no. Honestly, and I remember looking and like no one laughed, and I was like, oh no, this is it. I've absolutely lost the crowd at this point. And it comes back to, I think, the use of humour is really important because it releases endorphins as a hormone, and that's really important. But you need to place it well, and it was awful. I placed it, and then I did like another joke after to try and follow it, like, something about from the people at the front and the back tell the ones from the people. It was terrible. I can't remember. It was terrible, and it was just awful. But yeah, so in that moment, but how did I recover it? Probably unknowingly. I think I and I can't really answer that question factually, but I think what I would have done, I would have just dropped that script and just been me and talked through what was on the stage. And they always used to say that my enthusiasm, my passion came across, and it was and engaged people, and people believed what I was saying because I meant it. And so that's probably what I did to correct it, but I do remember that, and that was terrible. And you're not always going to, and that's the thing. I think with public speaking, you can practice all you want, and I think that people can segment audiences. Know your segment. Say your segment's made up of 1,000 people. Those 1,000 people are individuals. You can't segment. You can categorize people, but you can't segment individuals, right? So I think you just have to accept sometimes that you're not going to land with everybody. But as long as someone leaves with a message, and you've made a form of impact, then that's important.
I guess people relate to authenticity, don't they?
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
So the more authentic you can be, the more people are going to kind of engage. We talk about communication and the importance of delivering communication in the right way so that we're perceived in the right way. Is there a balance to be found there? Because the flip to that is like as you said, you're not going to land with everybody.
No.
You've got that. There are going to be people that, as even communicating as well as you possibly can, they're not gonna want to engage. They're not going to want to. Yeah. So how do you find that balance?
I think you have to set yourself up to give yourself the best chance. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to communication, don't necessarily think about why they're communicating. So, we communicate for 80% of the day that we're awake. And which is, so we're for like 14 hours, like 11 hours we're communicating. So we're in this constant dialogue of communication. And if you were to ask yourself every time you go to communicate, why am I doing it? What is the impact that I want to make? You'll find that you will land better. You'll land with more effectiveness. And I say there's I think there's 6 ingredients of impactful communication. If you were to kind of break them down into things, you either want to educate someone, you want to inform them, you either want to influence them, or you want to persuade them, or you either want to motivate or inspire them. Typically, you can bucket them into those 6 areas. Depending on where that lands, influences how you then want to communicate. So, for example, if I want to educate you on something, I'll do it in a certain way. If I want to inspire you, I'll do it in a very different way, because the path to that is different, because you're trying to elicit a different impact. And I think with that, and working through some of the principles of communication and what I call storytelling, it gives you the best chance. But to your point, you're not always going to land. You can't, and it's not about manipulating someone to get what you want. It's just about the fact that you communicate a message as clear as you can, with as much relevance and relatability to their context and scenario, authentically, emotionally. And if it doesn't land, that's okay. It's fine. But you've given it the best, given it the best possible chance. Like, I believe that 8 billion people could relate to the book because it's talking about communication. So 8 billion people on this planet communicate. Are 8 billion people going to buy the book? Well, I hope so, but nice. But I doubt it very much, and that's okay because, it's doesn't land with everybody and that's totally fine. Like, that's cool. But I think you kind of set yourself up to communicate in the best way you can, but ultimately you're not always going to land with everybody. And that's okay. That's totally okay.
Cool. So uni done. Moving into the corporate world, like how did that how did uni relate to the, to you moving into that kind of corporate world and this leadership journey that you've been on? It all started in my placement year at Toshiba. So I was kind of, as part of the course, I could choose my path, in terms of like different types of businesses that you could work for. And so the university would accept like roles from different companies, and then you would apply for them in terms of the class and the student. And anyway, so I wasn't taking it that seriously, if I'm brutally honest. And there was a role, and my friend at the time was going for this job. And he was like, "Oh, Jamie, what have you applied for?" I was like, "I've not really applied for anything yet, if I'm honest." And he's like, "Come on, Jamie, you've got to do this." So I was like, "Okay, fine." Again, not really. It wasn't really my thing. And so I was like, "Okay, cool." And he said, "Well, just come for the job that I'm going, because I'm driving up there. So just come with me in the car. Let's go together and we can both go." So I applied for it, which I thought was, I think it's that Japanese car manufacturer. But Toshiba isn't, clearly. It's very much not that. It's Toyota. So ironically, in marketing, you do. So anyway, we went up there and they interviewed us, and I was interviewed by Jeremy and Steve, who then became my 2 managers. Anyway, came back, got a letter, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, to say that, "Jamie, congratulations, you got the job." So I was like, I felt really bad for my mate that drove me there. But he got another great placement anyway, because he went to a few. Anyway, so got the job, and I went into Toshiba. And my first day, I wanted to know from my 2 managers, why they employed me. And they said, and I was thinking, was it my suit that I wore, or was it my kind of black shoes with a gold buckle across, the ones that were actually held together by sellotape because they snapped. They were snapped, those River Island ones. I was talking about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs or Porter's 5, all that jazz. It wasn't. It was a story that I told about 28 bags of sprouts. That's why I got that job. And it was basically a story about selling 28 bags of sprouts on Christmas Eve in the late 90s at my local greengrocers, which I was super proud of. And I told this story with such passion, enthusiasm, and authenticity, in their words, that I got that job. So that stood it out. It was that story. And I did the placement year there. And when I finished that, went to my last year, they were like, "Whatever your grade," which probably wasn't the best thing to say to me, "whatever your grade you get, you've got a job here, Jamie." And the job was like a junior product manager, company car, really good salary at the time. I think at the time it was like £20,000. It's like over 20 years ago. Jeez. Company car. I was like 22 at the time. Oh my goodness, like, this is amazing, So anyway, so obviously I said yes, and I love the company, and I spent 5 years there, and I was kind of in sort of product and marketing. I kind of progressed through there. I had some, it was the best grounding of corporate leadership life that I could have had at that age. It was a combination of fun, but it was a real supportive family, which really connected with me. They really gave me a chance. They gave me opportunity. I was young, but they saw, opportunity in me, and they helped me with that. Some great bosses there. And I was there for like 5 years. I think I hit a point of a ceiling where I was like, right, what do I want to do next? But the next jump for me was to become the marketing director. But I was like 27, and the marketing director was a lot. It's not about age, but they're a lot older, and
it's just when you sit on a board of a company, it's different, very different. And I was no way near ready for that at that stage. So I kind of wanted to kind of move on, and it was really tough. And I kind of know when I'm ready to move, because I'm kind of an all or nothing type person. I'm either 100% or I'm 0%.
Yeah. And
so while that's a good and a bad thing, the good thing about it is that I know when I'm ready to do something different, because I can be re-engaged, but you turn me back up to 100 or I'm down to 0.
Yeah.
So I kind of hit that point, and I was like, right, I need to kind of move on. And but I was managing like the student and then a couple other people, and I was getting into it. And then the bright lights of Samsung kind of came along, and the golden carrot of Samsung at the time, where you could move into that company and earn a bucket load more money, which at the time in my 20s was very important to me. But very different environment, very different. And there was a role, and they asked me about it, and it was to head. So it was a European product marketing role covering covering the European region, Western and Eastern Europe, and Central Europe, and like it's all that digital printing, their digital kind of photocopying type products, which is what I was looking after at Toshiba, and I joined them, and oh my goodness, that was 6 years there. That was fun. It was. I mean, you speak to anyone that worked at Samsung during that time. We used to call it the Samsung wall, which was at 6 months, which is typically a company probation anyway.
Yeah.
Which I still think calling it probation's really weird, because it's kind of like a criminal thing.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of see it, right? It's like you pass your probation. Oh, good. Can you take it off my ankle?
Yeah.
For me, it's like your onboarding period, as I see it. But again, storytelling, communication, right? And but you hit that 6 months. If you got past 6 months at Samsung, then you were there for a while. But a lot of people couldn't make the 6 months because of the and I say everything I say in the right way, but it was quite a brutal environment. But it's an environment I thrived in. Once I got over the 6 months, it was one I absolutely thrived in. And I kind of did the European product role, and then I was asked to move down into the UK division and head up for B2B for Samsung, their marketing and kind of their product commercial division as well, for all of print at the time. So a lot of responsibility at what was a young age, and my goodness, it was chaos. It was crazy. The environment was crazy.
Yeah.
But it grounded me so much. I was leading all the way through it. I had teams there, but it grounded me so much at that right age in terms of my experience, in terms of resourcefulness, multitasking, negotiating, trading. It was trading. It was and the handling. So many different experiences there you can't imagine, of different cultures. It was an amazing time, but it's mentally very, very hard time.
Yeah.
During that period.
Yeah, I can imagine. I worked in a similar industry actually.
Right.
Consumer electronics.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've I had a lot of dealings with Samsung and the like. So yeah, I definitely know where you're coming from there. And then, so you kind of continue this leadership journey.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is like the story at the very start of your book happened 20 years before you actually then came to sort of get to a point where you're like, I'm going to write about it. So was that what I'm trying to get to, is that impact of those two guys telling you got the job because of that story that you told?
Yeah.
How did that impact you during those 20 years that you hadn't written a book?
Yeah.
Was it always there, or was it just something that developed over time?
Do you know what? It's a really good question, and the one consistent thing that people have said to me, this is using other people's views as opposed to my own. Jamie, your superpower is storytelling, communicating. That's what you're really good at. When you speak, people listen. And actually, when you speak, you know, you make an impact. And I've always found that. And I don't think I ever appreciated it, really. But it grew over time. And by the way, I'm not saying like I'm the best in the world at this. I'm far from perfect. But I have a position and a view on it, and I think it's important. I think it's important. But I think, you know, what Jeremy and Steve said to me, and that story over 20 years ago, reflecting back on it now, Anne, yes, that was a pivotal moment. But it wasn't just that story. It was the inner rock part as well. I think those two combined have then just been part of my journey for the last 20 years. And I like to think that, and don't get me wrong, I don't sit here as this multi-millionaire scale-up company that's built an app and I'm, you know, bought an island somewhere. No, I'm just a normal average guy that's worked hard. I still have a big mortgage. You know, I've still got all these other financial pressures, don't get me wrong. But I've been given opportunities early in my career. You know, even beyond Samsung at 33, I was put on a board of a multinational organization which is young. I mean, I was the youngest. In fact, when I first turned up, one of the other directors turned around and said, "Why have we employed a 12-year-old to sit on our board?" I won't say who it was. They know who it was. And it's funny, and I don't mind because I you know, got a good relationship with the person now. But, you know, but I believe that it's down to my ability to communicate with people that has done that, because it all boils down to that. So back to your question, you know, do I feel that I think that story and that approach has been subconsciously with me through my 20 years. And it's only really the last couple of years where I've wanted to change and I've had to force myself to think about how could I create something new. It's brought it all to the surface and crystallized, right, I need to manifest this into something now.
So when was the light bulb moment of, I've got this story, hang on a minute, I've got something here.
Yeah.
And I've got something that other people could use. Was that a gradual thing, or was it literally like oh my God, mate? Well,
so it was a gradual thing, but actually there's like 3 stages of that graduality, let's call it. So the first was, I was about, I think it was like 2019, and I was kind of 7 years into my role at Sodexo. I love that company. Been amazing to me. I was there for 10 years. Big changes in my life in that time. And we had a company event, and we had someone called Simon Alexander Ong who came along to the event. You know, he's a best-selling author, book called Energize, really, really great book. If people want to read that. And he did a talk there, and he's one of the contributors actually in my book. Now, he was on stage and he did this, and he presented this message, and he delivered it to the team, and he kind of signed some books and left. And I was chatting to 2 of my other directors at the time, and I was like, oh, do you know what? That's great. That's so cool. Like, he's up there, he's getting paid to do it. You know, he's obviously clearly enjoys it. And they turned and said, "You could do that." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You could do that. You could do that really well, Jamie." Seed planted. And then kind of skipped forward a bit of time, and I was trying to grow in my role, and the only way that I could grow in my role was to move to another country. You know, by the way, great countries like America or France, or these aren't, you know, bad countries to me, but I didn't want to relocate, right? It wasn't in my family's life plan. So I had a limit on my growth. And then about a year before I left my previous company, I was on a podcast, and we were chatting away, and I was talking about the importance of storytelling for marketeers, you know, and I think, you know, marketers can communicate a lot of stuff, but do they actually really think about the bite of their impact, what they're doing? And I told the story about 28 bags of sprouts, and the podcast, the 2 that they're interviewing, they were like, "Jamie, that would make a really great title for a book." Bit of water on that seed, a little bit of soil, a bit of compost, a bit of water on that seed. Interesting. And then the final thing, and I do have a prop here to show you. I was coming to the end of my journey with my company, and I wanted to do something different. And I kind of made the decision that I wanted to change. And I had a few drinks with my wife at home, a few more drinks, listened to a bit of music. And I was like, "Right, honey," I said, this is what I want to do. I said, and I kind of explained my journey. And I said, I want to write this book. I passionately believe in storytelling. I want to do this. This is my dream. And I said, I think I've got a model. Now, I know everyone's got a model, right? And even in the coffee shop before we spoke about models, but I've got something that I personally believe can be used for any scenario. So I said, look, this is what I believe in. And I got it. And I put it in here. This is it. And I drew it on a piece of kitchen towel.
No way.
And this is what I drew for purposes of the camera. And I drew on here the Sprout model. And I drew it out and I said, I think this can change people's lives. Is how I felt in that moment with some alcohol in me. And she was like, right, okay, Jamie, you know, technically the breadwinner of it's equal, but, you know, technically the breadwinner of the household and what I bring in is important. Okay, demonstrate it to me. So I used the Sprout model and I spoke about my family through the Sprout model to my wife at that time, about 3-4 minutes. And at the end, she was in tears. And it wasn't tears of pain, which was like, oh my God, what are you about to do? This is crazy. You know, let's remortgage the house or what have you. It really hit her heart. Now, there's alcohol involved and she knows my family and what have you. But the way I narrated it to her, she was like, she grabbed that bit of paper, that bit of kitchen towel. She said, you have to do this. You have to do this. And she said, I will support and back you all the way. And in that moment, I thought, if I don't try this, I will be 20 years on and I will always ask myself the question, what if? Yeah. And I cannot have that. So despite the risk, despite the fact I'm financing myself with my savings and everything else, I was like, I have to do it. I have to do it. I'm so passionate about it. And there's some other things as well. You know, my dad passing was a big part of this, and everything I do in this project now is for Dad. Everything's for Dad with this. He's in my gut. He's kind of guiding me as I like to see it. But I just took the decision I had to do it. And it was those 3 events, San, that led me to that call that, right, I have to do this dream. And then the rest is, doing it.
I like how you had to get your wife drunk. That's brilliant.
Drunk wife drunk. It's
right,
quite
either or.
yeah.
I think it's a massively inspiring story. Can you explain the Sprout model?
I'd love to explain the Sprout model. So it's based on sprouts, and I'm for purposes of the visual aid, I'm wearing green. I'm wearing green trainers and stuff, and it's just part of my personal branding, but quite unique. You know, sprouts are quite polarizing. You know, you love them or hate them, and especially for kids, it's quite funny. But the Sprout model is essentially, as you can imagine, a sprout. It's made up of layers. It's got a core. So the Sprout model's got 6 layers. And my view on the world and view on impactful communication is that if you run it through 6 layers, even at the highest level, it will improve the impact of your communication that you want to have, because you're applying a storytelling mindset to it. A lot of people see stories as big moments, you know, like I'm about to tell a story or it's story time, you know, but I see storytelling for the every moment, every communication with a storytelling approach, because humans respond really well to stories. So the Sprout model's got the 6 layers. Starts off with impact, which is the core, the first layer. And that's when you propose, why am I doing this communication? And as I said earlier, it's educate or inspire. Depending on that, it then leads you on to the next layer, which is people. And in people, it is about thinking about your audience, but it's also about recognizing that you're communicating to human beings, flesh and blood, and they have emotions. So it's not just about the diversity of who you're talking to, it's also about how you want to make them feel and the emotions that you want to elicit, the hormones that you want to elicit in a human being to have a much better impact. So they're the first 2 layers. And once you've got that, you then go through a traditional storytelling approach, which is like start point, main event, as I call it, and end point. And this is where you're kind of going into the traditions of storytelling, where you're, you know, understanding the direction you want to take it in, the context of your story or your communication. You then kind of walk into the main event, which is all about kind of the challenge or opportunity that you're facing in a communication, and then the action to address it. And then the end point is centered around kind of clarity, conclusion, and also the lasting impression that you want to leave on someone with a communication. And then the final layer, the sixth layer, is nurture. And actually that is the final layer that goes around the whole sprout. And because I see nurturing as a continual layer through your storytelling. So that's about the creativity that you bring to it. It's about the perspective that you bring to it. It's about the energy that you bring to your storytelling as well. So the sprout model is this six-boxed model, and you kind of take your storytelling scenario, you challenge yourself for those 6 areas, you complete it with your communication, you deliver it. Now, if we're having a chat, not now, but if we're having a chat one-to-one, 5 minutes, you can use the sprout model, but like super high level. You know, why am I want to do this? Who am I talking to? What's the point I want to get across? How can I make it engaging? Even like basic principles, that kind of works. But then you could be entering a company event in front of 1,000 staff members, and your storytelling becomes a lot more complex because of the nuance of that. So then you would take it through the 6 layer of the sprout model, but within the sprout model there are 28 ingredients. So there's all these different ingredients, and you can challenge your communication with all 28, and each of them will be designed to elicit the best outcome for you. So it could be anything from how to strike a quick emotional connection with people that you don't know first, all the way through to the dance, as I called it, which is where you are open and responsive to how your audience is responding to your storytelling, and how you as a storyteller can lead them, how they lead you, and you end up in a great endpoint. So kind of in a nutshell, that's what the sprout model is all about. And I've kind of designed it so that anyone can apply it. Number one, it transcends all cultures, languages, geographies, and more so it can be applied to kind of any scenario really.
Amazing. I mean, I've started reading the book. We had this conversation earlier. My fitness for readings deteriorated since audiobooks have come out.
Which I will do. I'm doing the audiobook.
Yeah,
the audiobook is coming. Yeah,
I really look forward to that.
Yeah.
But what I've read about halfway through at the moment, and I was actually really surprised at how useful and resourceful the book is. I mean,
Appreciate that,
I knew that I was going to learn something.
Yeah,
but it's so impactful, and you know, like you say, it's so relatable because you can apply it to everyday conversations, and you almost naturally find yourself doing it. Like, you know, when just having a conversation with the wife, I'm finding myself thinking, what do I want to get out of this conversation? And it's strange how it works, but
and I wanted it, and I want
benefit.
And thank you. I really appreciate that, and I do. And you know, the response. You know, I wanted to create something which, you know, you don't have to take all 28 ingredients and 6 layers, sit down, work it all out, and then chat to someone. That's not the point. You know, I've designed it as a workbook. It's got an index in the back, and you can take one thing, one ingredient, and practice it. But, you know, I think the beauty of this, whether it's this or something else, but the beauty of practicing storytelling communication, it's free. You don't have to subscribe to it. Okay, the book's $12.99, but you know, I like to think the value you get off the back of it is different. But you know, or $9.99 or as an ebook. But you know, you can practice it any way you want. So you don't need to subscribe. You don't need equipment. It doesn't need to be certain times of the day. As long as you're in a communication with someone, which is 80% of your day, you can practice it. You know, so you could pick lasting impression. I really want to make this type of lasting impression in my communications at work, and I'm going to practice that and get comfortable. And then you do another one, and like you say, it then becomes subconscious. But you know what it all boils down to is that the whole purpose of this, of course, of what I'm trying to do is to create a new career path for myself, being very transparent about it, and have a fair, sustainable income that I can continue doing this. You know. And other books, I talked about my kids' book in the Cafe Overview. I've done the kids' version of the book as well. Because I think it's so important, but more so, I genuinely believe by having a better impact in your communication will help, not so much help, will help change people's lives. Because that interview, that you can make that extra difference, could mean you get that job. It means you get that pay rise or that shift in scenario, you know. That chat with someone that allows them to reflect back on themselves and to make a change in their life positively, the positive impact is significant. And that's why I think it's so powerful. And the feedback, and I appreciate the feedback I've had on it has been like amazing. And do you know what? And when you do something like this, right? I mean, you talk about putting CVs out there or covering letters. This is arguably the most exposed I could be, like putting my ideas out on paper, sharing it publicly. Like if this went out and people thought, what a load of rubbish, that's my reputation, like gone. It is. So far the response has been good, and I'll take that. But it's, as I said at the top of the podcast, it's so scary.
Yeah.
At the same time.
It's amazing. I mean, yeah, like I said, you know, I recommend it to anyone. It's been a great read so far. I've got some quick fire questions for you, if that's all right.
Shoot.
What 3 things would you say have got you to where you are today?
Number 1, my family.
Mm-hmm.
My family. Been a constant. Number 2, caring about what I do. It's not necessarily about working hard, because I wouldn't profess anyone to like work 14-hour days, weekends and stuff like that. I know some people choose to do that, but I think if you caring about what you do means you go above and beyond in what you do, and you'll see the result. So the second one would be, so first is my family, second is caring about what I do, and the third is storytelling. Has to be for me, because I think the communication with people, if I wasn't able to communicate with people through my life, I don't even know where I'll be. Anyone would be. So storytelling has been the third. So my family, caring about what I do, and storytelling would be the 3 for me.
If you could change anything about the journey that's led you here, would you? And what would it be?
Nothing. If I could go back in time and give myself advice, yes, I would give myself different advice, but I would never change anything. And the only reason being is because if I had, and I did, I wouldn't be sitting here today. What's that film? Sliding Doors? Is that the film?
Oh, yeah.
You know, those sliding doors, I think everybody has sliding doors moments every single day, and people make choices and they go. So I do a bit, you know, where I sit here today, super anxious, nervous about where this and my wider kids book project and other things could go, my own, you know, self-employment. I have no idea, but right here, right now, I'm very happy with where I'm at, and the people around me, and I would never change that for the world. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
Amazing. What's next?
What's next? Of course, you know, sharing the book with as many as possible is what's next. I think also trying to create a self-employment orientated business out of this for me. So to help businesses, leaders, teams to with their communication, with storytelling, and to, I hope, you know, take the Sprout model in and to kind of train it on, you know, with people, but also apply it to scenarios and see an impact. Speaking, obviously, public speaking, like I love that. So that's a big part. But the other thing is, the other part of my dream is to have a further 2 books. So I mentioned it a couple of times, but I've created a kids version of the book for ages 4 to 8, a picture book.
Amazing.
Kind of like a rhyming book, which is fully drafted up. I did some focus groups with parents over Easter and their kids, and a couple of schools as well, from an educational, you know, angle. The feedback's been amazing. So I've now sent that off to 7 literacy agents.
So what was the theory behind that? Like, what led you to writing a kids book?
Because so I wanted to do this for workplace adults, but I believe storytelling is for everybody. And actually, more importantly, impressionable ages, as we said at the start, you know, that 0 to 7, but even the age of transition that I went through, you know, my schooling years, like 11 to 14, I believe storytelling is a crucial skill in their transitions through life. And I've always wanted to ensure that this and my model is available for them, accessible for them. So that's why. So I call it my Sprouting series, which is about growth. So I'd love someone at the age of 4 to grow through my picture book that introduces the Sprout model, but age appropriate, through to kind of that ages 11 to 14, and how, again, a lighter version of this chapter book through stories of different pupils, teachers, etc., you know, giving them advice about communication, storytelling at that age group. And then obviously you've then got this for kind of more higher education and into the workplace. So I've always wanted to have the 3 books, you know, and have that sprouting series so people can take advantage of that skill, apply it, and see the benefit of it. I think it's crucially important. Crucially important.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's brilliant. You know, like
and it sprouts like kids polarize with sprouts, right? But I just think it's quite a funky topic as well.
Yeah.
So, sorry, yeah.
It's controversial. Because like some of them hate them with the passion. And it's like, it's not even I don't like them, it's I hate them.
I know. And do you know what? And I've got this vision of like basically driving sprouts to become the nation's favourite vegetable in kids, because there's lots of health benefits and everything that is. But again, it comes back to the art of communication and storytelling. Like if I can get kids to love sprouts, my goodness, like if I can do that, you know, turn water into wine, or, you know, sand into gold. But no, I have a big passion for that. And I'm doing some collaboration with my old uni, my old senior school, sixth form, and also my son's school as well on the books. And they see huge opportunity and benefit for it. And yeah, I just think it'd be amazing. So I'm hoping that I can use my time to do that as well in terms of what next. And I'd love to just gift time back to go into schools to talk about it. And that comes back to this whole balance thing at the start. That's what I'm trying. That'd be success for me. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Amazing. Where can people buy the book, and where can people find out more information about yourself and get in touch?
Yeah, so the book, I mean, just type in 28 bags of sprouts on Amazon. Yeah. You're not going to miss it. 28 bags of sprouts on Amazon. So you can buy it from there. It's paperback or ebook. And the audio book's probably still about 6 to 8 weeks away, but that's coming. So that's where you can check the book out. And in terms of more about me, and my very green website, just go to, jamie-mackenzie.com, or just type in Jamie Mackenzie author in Google and I'll pop up, or Jamie Mackenzie on LinkedIn, probably best, and you can find me and connect with me on there. Just explore more about my story and what I want to achieve with this. Amazing.
Well, I mean, I think from when we first started having the conversation about coming on and me learning the sprout model, I've been really excited to have the conversation.
Thank you,
and it certainly hasn't disappointed. I think, like,
thank you, man.
You're a super inspirational guy. I think.
Thank you.
Just the fact that you have got a flourishing career, a family, and you've decided just to hold your nose and jump into the deep end with like self-employment and put yourself under that pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows the character, but it also shows the confidence and the passion that you've got for this project.
Yeah,
which I think is hugely important, and you can certainly tell that with the way you kind of articulate the model and when we're talking about it. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been really inspirational, incredible, and interesting conversation.
Likewise, Ant. And hey, huge congratulations to you with your podcast.
Thank you.
Seriously, because everyone has to start somewhere. And you've clearly got a dream. You work for it. You work hard for it. You're doing that, and I appreciate you having me on, and I also recognise in you what you're doing as well. So, all the best to you as well, chap, as well. You deserve it.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Yo, check it out. It's the Grind Diaries podcast, where we share all our hustling stories. Yeah, from the struggles to the grind, we spill it on the mic, so sit back, relax.